hereafter, and to seek the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. And as the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said in the authentic hadith, بشر هذه الأمة بالسنة والتمكين في البلاد والنصر والرفعة في الدين. Give the glad tidings for this ummah that it will be well established in the land and for it to be victorious and to be elevated in matters of deen. ومن عمل منهم بعمل الآخرة للدنيا فليس له في الآخرة نصيب. And whoever do among them from the actions that it's supposed to be for the sake of seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter for the worldly benefit, there's no share for them in the hereafter. And it's all linked together. Unless this ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, its concern is the hereafter, not this worldly life. And what concerns them in this life is to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior, is to establish the deen of Allah. And that's it's all for the sake of Allah, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among them, inshallah. We didn't start yet, for those who just joined, inshallah. We're continuing with the subject of al-fiqh, and we're still in the kitab al-janaiz, the chapter of al-janaiz, or funeral and salatul janaza, so the salah of the janaza. And we stopped at where he says وَفَضْلُ الصَّلَاةِ عَلَى الْجَنَازَةِ, the fadl or the virtue of the salah on the janaza. Al-janaza is the funeral, and the janaza is also called, or it's to be given to the deceased when the people are praying for the janaza. So this is also called janaza. So the fact that the person is dead and being carried on the shoulders or put for people to pray, that is called janaza. The individual himself is called janaza. That's why as-salah al-janaza, to pray on the janaza, meaning to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the dead. So the dead is called janaza. So he says the virtue of it, لِلْمُصَلِّ عَلَى الْجَنَازَةِ قِرَاطٌ مِنَ الْأَجْرِ. The person that prays salatul janaza, he has a qirat of the reward. The word qirat is a unit of measure. Well, qirat, how much is a qirat? Because it depends on what people use it. It's still used till today as part of the acre, a portion of it. But this is irrelevant. What's meant by the qirat here, al-qirat qadru jabal Uhud. As the Prophet ﷺ stated in the hadith, the qirat is as much or as big as the mountain of Uhud. This is for salatul janaza only. The reward for the salah is as big as the mountain of Uhud. فَإِن تَبِعَهَا حَتَّى تُدْفَنْ فَلَهُ قِرَاطًا. And if a person follows the janaza till it's buried, then he has 2 qirat. Each qirat is equal to the mountain of Uhud. As we just mentioned, where do we get to know that? From the wahy from Allah, from the ilm of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine someone that never heard this before, never heard this reward before. And that's why when Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he heard this hadith from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, when he quoted the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, من صلى على جنازة فله قراط ومن تبعها حتى أو من انتظرها حتى تدفن فله قراطان. Whoever prays the janazah, he gets 1 qirat. Whoever follows it till it's buried, he has 2 qirat. Each qirat is as equal as the mountain of Uhud. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he said, كم فرطنا من قراريط كثيرة. How many qararit? Qararit is the plural of qirat. How many of these qararit that we had missed in our life? So much great reward that is missed, and it's easy to attain such a reward for someone to pray janazah. Salatul janaza is not only for those who the person knows. This is the right of the Muslim. And as mentioned before, that the hukm, the ruling of it, that it's fardu kifaya, that it's fard upon the community, upon the people, for every Muslim that dies, that they pray janazah on him. If some fulfill it, then there's no sin on the rest. But no one prays janazah when they know and they're present, then they all become sinners. But for an individual, this is recommended. Salah, of course, it's not fard upon every single Muslim. but it's for every Muslim and not just for the ones that a person knows. So this is the reward of praying Salatul Janazah. Then he says yusannu. So what yusannu means? Recommended. That means a person get rewards. If he doesn't, he does not get a sin. And I'm repeating this over and over again because when you're studying fiqh, you're studying law. So the law is different than what a person wants to soften his heart, for example. When you study something like the fiqh, you want to know what is sinful and what is not. And not everything that is not obligatory, we leave it. If it's recommended, we should do the best we can to perfect it, of course, not to leave it. Not to, oh, this is recommended only. Yes, it's recommended. That means you do it and you seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing it. So yusannu, it's recommended أن يحمل الميت أربعة رجال. It's recommended that 4 men would carry the deceased so that it's well balanced. ويسن للرجل الواحد أن يحمل بجوانب السرير الأربع. And it's recommended for the 1 man for each one to carry from each side of a sarir or the bed or the thing that they put the deceased in. ويسن الإسراع بالجنازة. And it's recommended to al-isra', to walk fast with the janazah. And walking fast with the janazah, not to run with the janazah, but to walk fast in a way that doesn't make the janazah fall or people, causing harm, but not to be too slow, but rather to go fast. And it's mentioned the wisdom behind that is either the janazah is good or bad. If it's good, the person that is deceased and he's being carried going to his grave, and if he is righteous and what's waiting for him is a great reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he can't wait till he's buried. He wants to go to the grave so that he can receive the great rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are bothering him by delaying his burial, which is al-qabr or the grave, the most scariest thing ever. As the Prophet ﷺ said, in هذه القبور مليئة ظلم على أهلها. These graves are full of darknesses on its people. وإن الله منورها بصلاة عليها. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it light by my dua, my salah, for those who are in it. But for the believers, of course, that once they're given the glad tidings, they can't wait till they receive the great rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it's so, that means you're doing a favor. That's why from the ikram, from the honor of the deceased, to bury him quickly. And if it's the opposite, then why would you want to carry something that is evil? You want to get rid of it as soon as you can. Of course, we don't know what's the unseen. So both ways, then to make isra' with al-janazah, to go fast. وأن يكون المشاة أمامها والركبان خلفها. He says here it's recommended that al-mushah, those who are walking, to be in front of it, and those who are riding to be behind it. But this is just a matter of ease. But there's no specific position where it's best for the janazah. Whatever is easy, whether it's to be behind it, next to it, in front of it, as long as the person is walking with it, not ahead too much. So this is also to be perceived urfan. The person looking at the janazah from a distance, is that person with the janazah or he's on his own? So to be with the janazah. So these are different things that is recommended for people to carry it, and the person doesn't have to be in one spot, but to move from one spot to the other. And this is also helps the people to be at ease if it's heavy or so. It's also recommended to do it fast, to walk fast, and that those who are walking are in front and those who are riding are in the back. And this is all means of ease, or to make it faster. The next point, he says صفة القبر والدفن. Now some of the rulings with regards to al-qabr or the grave, والدفن and the burial, وما يمنع في القبور, and what's forbidden in al-qubur. So the deen of Islam, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is for those who are alive and for those who are dead, and for a person is alive and when a person dies. And there's rulings here. يجب أن يعمق القبر. He says it's mandatory for the qabr to be deep. أن يعمق القبر. And of course the wisdom of that is very clear. so that no animal passing by, would expose the deceased or something, wind or storm or something like this. So it needs to be deep down. فإذا بلغ, I'm not talking about distance, but again, this is depend from one place to the other, whether it's the land is rocky or soft or so. So it to be deep enough that it's not easily dug or something like that. فإذا بلغ أسفل القبر حفر فيه مما يلي القبلة مكانا يوضع فيه الميت يسمى اللحد. The best and the most perfect way is to bury the Muslim in the lahd. And al-lahd is you go down all the way to the bottom of the grave, and then you dig on the side of it, in a place where the deceased will go into the earth, facing the Qibla, with his face on his right side, to lay on his right side facing the Qibla. The lahd, right? So it's you go deep in the grave, all the way in the bottom, and then you dig on the side of the grave. So he's buried not as a hole and to put him on the ground and to bury him, but rather you go down. If you look down, you won't see him. Why? Because he is buried. On top of him is earth, because you dug a hole, or it's not a hole, it's enough for his body to be pushed into the side, and then to put some blocks or so that he does not fall. Putting his face facing the Qibla. He says في مكان يوضع فيه الميت يسمى اللحد وهو أفضل من الشق. It's better than الشق. الشق is just a hole in the ground. Both are fine, both are permissible, but it's best to bury in the lahd. And again, also this is different from one place to the other. If the land is soft, the lahd won't work, because if people do something like that for the lahd, the earth will collapse, will go down. But if it's the desert or it's rocky and things like this, then it's best. So whatever is best for the deceased. ويقول مدخله, and the one that is putting him in the grave or putting him in the lahd, it's recommended to say Bismillah وعلى ملة رسول الله. Bismillah, which is always to be said in any situation, and وعلى ملة رسول الله, and upon the millah, the religion of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That this is being done, and also hoping good for the one that died to be upon the way of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. ويضع في لحده على شقه الأيمن, and he put him in the lahd on his right side, مستقبل القبلة, facing the Qibla. ثم ينصب اللبن عليه نصبا. Then he put اللبن. اللبن is the clay or the bricks or whatever is feasible, to cover the lahd, to cover the opening of the lahd. Then ثم يدفن. Then this is how, to cover it basically, and to put the ground or the dirt on it. ويرفع, so it's to be leveled, of course. And then ويرفع القبر عن الأرض قدر شبر, and the grave is to be raised on top of the earth as 1 handspan height, the height of 1 handspan. ويرش بالماء. This is all, again, this is means of ease. It doesn't have to be, there's no evidence for every single method like this, but sprinkling water on it so that it becomes stable, heavy, things like this. But the fact that it's higher than the ground by 1 handspan, this is from the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And the wisdom behind that is that it's to be known that this is a grave. To be known that this is a grave. If it's just a flat land, people don't know there is a grave there. So they will walk on it, they will drive on it, there is some nusus text that forbids for the Muslim to sit on a grave, to walk on the grave. So, but now, for example, most of the graveyards, you have it grass, and just a sign that this is a grave. So a person, to the best of his ability, he should not walk on the grave where he knows that this is a grave. But ideally, that it's to be 1 handspan above the ground, but not to be built. And this will be mentioned. It's haram to build a grave. It's only to be done with dirt, with pebbles, with rocks, whatever, but not to be built. وَيَحْرَمُ الْبِنَاءُ عَلى الْقَبْرِ. It's forbidden to build on the grave. cement, bricks, to make it high, to make it nice, to put all kinds of things in it. All of that is forbidden. وتجصيصه, تجصيص is to put cement or clay. Of course, there was no cement then. You know how they would build the houses from clay to make it hard afterwards. All of that is forbidden. والوطء عليه, it's forbidden to step on it. والصلاة عنده, and to pray a normal salah, عصر, ظهر, whatever. Salatul Janaza, it's okay. It's permissible to pray Salatul Janaza by the grave. If someone missed Salatul Janaza, they can come to the grave and face the Qibla, make the body, whatever the position of the body, to be between the person and the Qibla, and to make Salatul Janaza. If he's not able to have the body of the deceased between him and the Qibla, just to face the Qibla and to make Salat al-Janaza. But to pray normal Salah, it's not permissible, as the Prophet ﷺ, he forbade that. He said, لعن الله اليهود والنصارى اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مساجد ألا وإني أنهاكم عن ذلك. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed al-Yahud wal-Nasara. They took the graves of their prophets as places of worship. And I forbade you from this. Clear forbidding the believers from praying in the graveyard, praying in a masjid that has graves in it. All of that is forbidden. It doesn't matter behind or the front or whatever. If the masjid is built on a grave, this is not permissible to pray there. And the same thing with the forbiddance of building on top of the grave. All of that because this is the ra'i' means for shirk to happen, for people to associate partners with Allah. They know the grave, they see it, build on it. So you never know. Maybe people now, they don't do anything, but maybe after some generations, as we mentioned that before, we don't have to see the end of things. It is sufficient that we are commanded to do one thing and we do it the way it is. And if a person is in that state of submission, he is safe. And there is all kinds of scary stories when it comes to this. You know, shaitan comes into the dream of someone and he says to him that grave in the graveyard, this is a man that is from the righteous people. Go raise his grave. And I'm saying this because I've witnessed that in my lifetime. And you can imagine how many people they do this. So they went and they even got the people of authority to dig in the grave and to get that guy out. And they raise the grave and they start seeking blessings from it because of a dream that a person saw. Shaitan come into his dream and he tells him to do this. So this is something that has to be clear, and this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's haram to do otherwise. And if a person wants his grave to be known for generations to come, where is the graves of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum? We only know counted ones. You know, and from the 10 al-ashar mubashshareen bil Jannah, how many we know where their graves are? Except Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and the rest. You know, there's all kinds of speculations. And some even buried on the way when they're traveling. So it's not a major thing for the Muslim. And anyway, who visit the grave of his great-great-great-grandfather? Most people, they don't even know where they're buried. So anyway, so we go back to the matters of fiqh. وَاتِّخَاذَ الْمَسْجِدِ عَلَيْهِ. It's haram to build a masjid on it. Even if the deceased made it in his wasiyah, his will, that the people with his own money build the masjid on his grave. This is, of course, haram to fulfill this wasiyah. It's forbidden by the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. وَالتَّبَرُّكْ وَالتَّمَسُّحْ بِهِ. To seek barakah from the deceased or from the grave, wiping or seeking barakah there. And seeking barakah even by sitting there. You know, some people, they have this thing. If a righteous man is buried, they would come and sit there, making dhikr, read Quran. They're not asking him for anything. They're not doing act of shirk clearly, but they think that this is a pleasant place for them to sit and make dhikr. This is all bid'ah, innovations, and it leads to what's worse. All of that is forbidden. When a person goes to the graveyard, he goes to the graveyard, which is going to come inshallah ta'ala, for two reasons. The first one, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, كنت قد نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور فزوروها فإنها تذكركم الآخرة. I used to forbid you from visiting the graves, but now visit the graves because it reminds you of the hereafter. So you visit the graves for your own benefit because it reminds us of the hereafter. The second reason is to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who are dead. So to benefit them with your dua. Anyone that goes to the grave to seek some benefit for his own self, other than that, this is then either goes into the categories of shirk or bid'ah or something else. But here, اتخاذ المسجد عليه, it's haram to have a masjid on it. والتبرك والتمسح به, seeking barakah, wiping, all of that is forbidden. ووضع السراج عليه, and to put fire on it, like the ways of the Majus, those who worship the fire, or candles, or all these types of things. Of course, it's haram. وَنَثْرُ الْوُرُودِ, and to sprinkle flowers or to put flowers by the grave, all of that is forbidden. This is not our ways. And might be shocking to some, the graveyard is not supposed to look so beautiful because it's supposed to remind you of the hereafter. You know, you go to the graveyard, it looks like a park. You want to sit there and enjoy and have fun. It's supposed to remind the person of the hereafter. So it's not supposed to be a place where you put zina and things of that nature. You're not doing any favor to the deceased if you do this. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. So nath al-wurud, al-tawaf bihi, of course, which is haram. So make tawaf around the graves, which is sad reality in some cases. The only place where tawaf is to be done is around the Kaaba, nothing else. Then he says, يُسَنُّ أَن يُصْنَعَ لِأَهْلِ الْمَيِّتِ طَعَامٌ وَيُبْعَثُ بِهِ إِلَيْهِ. It's recommended, it's from the Sunnah, that people would fix food for the family of the deceased and they send the food to them. Not that they go there and eat with them, they send it to them. They don't go bother them. Unless it's a person, a loved one or something that if they sit that they give them comfort, sure. But to send food to them because they are busy or they're not concerned about cooking food and things of that nature. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ said, اصنعوا لآل جعفر طعاما. When Ja'far radiallahu anhu, he died, the Prophet ﷺ said to fix for the family of Ja'far food and to send it to them. And some people, this is the opposite. Many people, when someone dies, the family of the deceased, they're the ones that fix the food. The sunnah is the opposite. You fix food for them and you send it to them. ويكره لأهل الميت صنع طعام للناس. So that's why it's disliked, يكره, makruh, for the family of the deceased to fix food for the people. But if they are stuck, someone is coming to visit them and they're expecting that they would have food, this is where it makes it difficult for them. So should they kick them out? No, I mean, it's and that's why people, when they learn the sunnah, even if they're coming from a distance to pray the janazah, they should consider these things. They should not make it difficult for the family of the deceased. Unless there's a benefit in them staying. Sometimes the family of the deceased, they want someone to sit with them, to give them comfort. So it has to be assessed according, every situation is different. But strangers and things like this, and they come and they sit and they spend the night or so, this is all bid'ah innovations in the deen. And the same thing when it comes to being gathered, as he would mention about that also, inshallah ta'ala. He says, يسن لمن زار القبور أن يقول السلام عليكم دار قوم مؤمنين وإنا إن شاء الله بكم لاحقون يرحم الله المستقدمين منكم المستأخرين نسأل الله لنا ولكم العافية اللهم لا تحرمنا أجرهم ولا تفتنا بعدهم واغفر لنا ولهم. It's recommended to say this dua or to say salam first when a person visits the grave. Assalamu alaikum dara qawmi mu'mini. Assalamu alaikum dar, the house, the abode of believing people. Which by itself it shows that it's forbidden for a believer to be buried in a non-Muslim cemetery. Because you're supposed to say salam to them. Assalamu alaikum dara qawmi mu'minin. And the Muslim graveyard should be clearly separated from everything else. So this is also something that is a must for the community to have a separate graveyard for the Muslims. This issue of having a section, it's not quite what should be done. If they have the means, and I think it's feasible. It might be a little bit difficult, even if it's far away, but the Muslims should have their own cemetery. And if it's a section, it has to be, something has to be done to make it from a distance look different. Fence around it, something. Of course, they would forbid for the most part these types of things, but it should be a separate cemetery, so that when you walk in, you don't go to the spot and say Assalamu alaikum. No, you're supposed to walk into the graveyard and to say Assalamu alaikum dara qawmi mu'minin. And then the rest of the dua. وَإِنَّا إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ لَاحِقُونَ, and we, inshallah, by the will of Allah, will join you. This is how things are. And subhanAllah, even the words that the Muslims, they say, it's not just a word that has no meanings to it. When a musibah happens, what a person say? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We are to Allah. We belong to Allah. We are creation of Allah. This is, you feel that connection or belonging. We belong to Allah. So that is not something that is strange or anything. This is how life is. Yes, but what is scary is if a person, wal'iyadhu billah, dies and he receives the punishment from Allah. This is what should be the thing that a person fears. So, وَإِنَّا إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ بِكُمْ لَاحِقُونَ, and inshallah we will be with you. لاحقون. Lahiq is the one that goes after the one. يَرْحَمُ اللَّهُ مُسْتَقْدِمِينَ مِنْكُمْ, may Allah have mercy those who are ahead among you, that means those who went before us. وَالْمُسْتَأْخِرِينَ, and those who will come later. So we're making dua for everyone. نسأل الله لنا ولكم العافية. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us and for you al-afiyah, strength. And the strength is for everything. Wealth, family, oneself, deen, dunya. If a person is alive, is the dunya. So for them, the afiyah with whatever they are in need of. And it's always the sunnah, when a person is making dua for someone, is to start with his own self first. نسأل الله لنا ولكم. نسأل الله لنا ولكم العافية. اللهم لا تحرمنا أجرهم. Oh Allah, do not make us deprived from their reward, that you're visiting the grave and giving dua and so on. ولا تفتنا بعدهم. And do not cause us to be afflicted with fitna after them. And when the fitan is in such a way that, as it's mentioned in some of the texts, when a person would stand by the grave and he wished that he is with those who are dead because of the severity of the fitan, for a person to save his deen. Those who passed away and they saved their deen, they died without being afflicted with the fitan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them. And those who are alive and fitna is afflicting them, make them away from the deen of Allah, they are in a miserable situation. So وَلَا تَفْتِنَّا بَعْدَهُم, do not make us in state of fitna after them. وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلَهُمْ, and forgive us and forgive them. To the best of one's ability to memorize this dua. He says, وَتُسَنُّ, so also the hukm here, it's recommended, تَعْزِيَةُ الْمُصَابِ بِالْمَيِّتِ قَبْلَ الدَّفْنِ وَبَعْدَ. It's recommended to make ta'ziyah. Ta'ziyah is the condolences. Al-Musab is the one that is afflicted by the calamity, the family of the deceased. So it's sunnah to make ta'ziyah, to give condolences before the burial and after it. All the way إلى 3 أيام بلياليهن إلا لغائب. All the way for 3 days and its nights, except someone غائب, someone that is absent, coming from a distance. So he didn't see them till afterwards, there's no harm. And the condolences is يُسَنُّ لِمَنْ أُصِيبَ بِمُصِيبَةٍ. Condolences is, as the Prophet ﷺ used to say, or anything that would give words of comfort, but he used to say, لِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذْ وَلِلَّهِ مَا أَعْطَى وَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ عِنْدَهُ بِأَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى فَاصْبِرْ وَاحْتَسِبْ. To Allah, لِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذْ, to Allah what he took, and to Allah what he gave. And everything is by أجل مسمى, everything with a known ajal, known limit. Nothing happens by itself like this. فَاصْبِرْ وَاحْتَسِبْ, therefore be patient and seek rewards from Allah. And if a person doesn't know this hadith specifically with this dua, just to advise them to be patient, advise them to seek rewards from Allah, and everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَيُسَنُّ لِمَنْ أُصِيبَ بِمُصِيبَةٍ. It's recommended for someone if he calamity afflicted him that he says, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَجِعُونَ. To Allah we belong and to Allah we shall return. اللهم أجرني في مصيبتي واخلف لي خيرا منها. Oh Allah, give me rewards for my musibah, for my calamity. واخلف لي. واخلف, that means al-khalaf is those who come later. And give me, replace it for me something better than this musibah. And Salama radiallahu anha, when she said this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave her better than her husband Abu Salama, and that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Please, am I going fast? The last point here in the chapter of Al-Janaiz, يجوز البكاء على الميت. It's permissible, يجوز. So the hukm here, يجوز to cry or to weep for someone that died. And the word يجوز, that means it's not haram, it's not recommended, and it means that a person should be at his norm. That means he should not force himself to cry. He should not fake crying. If he doesn't find tears, he should not force himself. It's not a bad sign or anything like this. This is something that people are overpowered to cry. Or crying is overpowering, is not something that a person should do something to make himself cry. And this is as a rule, whether it's in reading Quran, in Salah, and so on, a person should not make himself. Unless he's alone, that's different situation with matters of ibadah. But other than that, a person should hold himself to the best of his ability when it comes to being in front of people and things like this. So يجوز البكاء على الميت ويحرم, the ruling here, حرام شق الثوب, to tear the clothing as a way to show grief or sadness, ولطم الخد, and to beat one's cheeks, wailing, and ورفع الصوت, and to scream, ونحوه, and anything that looks as a sign of being in state of al-jaza', which is the opposite of the sabr. Al-jaza', the opposite of patience, which is anything that shows a person is not patient. Screaming, throwing things, and all kinds of things can lead the person to kufr wal-'adhu billah, opposing the qadr of Allah. Why this is happening to me? What did I do in my life for me to see? All these things are kufr, words of opposing the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ شَقَّ الْجُيُوبِ وَلَطْمَ الْخُدُودِ وَدَعَى بِدَعْوَى الْجَاهِلِيِّةِ. He is not one of us, the one that tear the clothing and beat their faces, and وَدَعَى بِدَعْوَى الْجَاهِلِيِّةِ, and call any calls of the jahiliyyah. So this is left open, anything of matters of jahiliyyah, that is forbidden. Clear? So we go to the zakah. Yes, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ used to order for the grave to be in يرفع قدر شبر, to be raised one hand span, and also the grave to be musannaman. He did not mention that here, where either to be like just a pile of rocks or pebbles or gravel or something like this, or to make it like a triangle with a sharp end. So this is when you see the graves like that, this is from the Sunnah also. And all of that is to make sure that it's known to be a grave, for people to see that this is a grave. And also to put a stone, not a built stone, not a carved stone, but to put something by the head of the grave, so that also people see that this is a grave. A stone, you get something, you find something on the side to put it there, right? Or it's okay to bring something if there's no stones there, but just not something manufactured or something built special. These stones where they especially make it for the grave is not permissible like that. Just a normal stone, and it's forbidden to write anything on the grave. the name of the person, the date of he was born, or date of he was died, and all of this. This is all forbidden. All of this haram. And there is clear hadith that the Prophet ﷺ naha an al-kitaba. He forbade writing on the graves. Say, but I want people to know where's my grave. Why you want people to know your grave? If you're buried among the Muslims, they will make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you. And if those who know you, they would know the grave, and that's it. Actually, you don't want people for a long period of time to know your grave. Because what if people start worshipping your grave besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or something? You never know. So this is, but again, regardless of what is this, the sunnah is what we heard. And it's all to remove and to extract every means that can lead to shirk or associating partners with Allah. Shaitan has his own ways when it comes to suwar, images, and dead people. These are two things that the shaitan, he works on the hearts of the people to have their hearts attached to this. And you might think of someone that is, when you see someone in your lifetime, you don't exalt that person because you see him, you see his weakness and everything. But when you have someone died and generation come and they never seen him, the effect in the heart is different. The effect in their heart is different. Especially when people praise him so much and so on. And then the shaitan has his ways in this. So that's why to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the best way. And if someone did something afterwards, it's not one's fault. Hmm. Hmm. Permissible for what? Oh, the question is it permissible to pray janazah on people that they never pray? They never pray, but when someone dies, they come to the janazah and people will pray janazah on them. The quick answer, yes. Allahu a'lam, as the ulama they say. In countries where many people, in that case, they don't know that salah is obligatory. This might be, you give them the benefit of the doubt, especially with places where they have no knowledge whatsoever. They call themselves Muslims, they consider themselves Muslims, but you ask one of them, is salah is obligatory? He says, no, it's not something that is an obligatory upon the deen or something like this. So to pray janazah among the people like this is something that should continue, and it's been the practice, as the majority of the ulama they say. But as far as the ruling of an individual, this is where it has the differences of opinions, and some said that whoever dies never prayed, he's a disbeliever. He's to be treated in the ruling of a disbeliever, not to be buried in the Muslim cemetery, things of that nature. And that's usually for those who are living among the Muslims and they know the rulings of it, and they continued not to pray. Now, that person is, no one is to, pray janazah on him and things like this. But in situations where, again, countries or communities that they have no knowledge and are upon ignorance and things like this, it is difficult to forbid people from making janazah or to stop people from making it. If an individual stays away, that's fine. And this can be a mean, of course, to give da'wah so that this matter of ignorance is removed. Allah. He mentioned it earlier, which is untying the rope. If the head is tied with a rope, to untie it, but not to uncover the face. Yes, after it's placed, you can untie the rope, but it's not something that is a must. But to untie it, just to make it at ease. No. Mm-hmm. No, the face. Yes, so he's on his right side, facing the Qibla.
And you said you can pray Salat al-Janaza if you missed it. Does it matter if it's already, the body's already buried?
Yeah, you can make up Salat if a person missed Salatul Janaza in the masjid and the body is been buried already, even if after the burial is done and the person was late and he come the next day. Even some of the ulama, they said up to 1 month, meaning it's not necessarily with a period of time, but what's known to be that he just, someone that just got buried and people didn't pray janazah on him. They can still go and pray janazah on them, but not for those who have been buried for a long time ago. It's just someone missed the janazah. And the Prophet ﷺ, when the woman that used to clean the masjid, she died and they buried her at night and they didn't inform the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Allah, halla akhbartumuni, why didn't you inform me? And he went and he prayed janazah on her in the graveyard.
Where there's a group in this situation, better to pray there.
No. The question with regards to if a person is in a place where he goes to pray in a masjid and there's a grave in the downstairs and the masjid is upstairs. If the masjid is built on the grave, there's a grave in the masjid. It doesn't matter if it's downstairs or upstairs. That means it's in the masjid. Then it's forbidden to pray in this masjid. And the person should find somewhere else to pray. Even if he doesn't find a place to pray and he prays at home, that's fine. That's better than to pray in the masjid. And if he prayed in a masjid like this, he should repeat his salah, even after 10 years. Because the Prophet ﷺ forbade it. And usually with this, people bring up the issue of the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was not buried in the masjid. The Prophet ﷺ forbade clearly for anyone to build a masjid on the grave. It was the expansion of the masjid that this is what happened. So this is the qadar of Allah. And the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ is separate. It's virtue by itself. Plus, when that happened, was the wahy coming down? No. Where do we take our religion? From the Quran and the Sunnah. So meaning there's no such a thing as this is an evidence of something. Something happened 200 years after the Prophet ﷺ is not an evidence for the deen. The deen was completed by the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quran and the Sunnah, and the rightly guided khulafa. And none of that happened at their time. But still, this is different because the Prophet ﷺ, again, he's buried in his house, he's not buried in the masjid. And so that means when people go to the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, they pray in every spot on it, it's fine. And of course, it's virtuous to pray there. And no matter what they face, they won't face the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's to be stayed in its place like this because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, and to avoid people to have fitan and things like this is what is must to be done. It's okay to start the zakah, just the beginning. Go ahead.
Could you advise someone who do not pray by telling him that the day he will die and don't pray on himself because he is scared?
Yes, you can. If this is something that would make a person, think about this seriously, it is always a good advice to say to people, just the fact that it's a valid, in Madhab Imam Ahmad and others, that a person that doesn't pray whatsoever, he's a kafir, he's a disbeliever. Because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, there's no hadith like it in anything else that a person misses in the deen. العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. The covenant between us and them is the salah, meaning the disbelievers. Whoever leaves it, salah, فقد كفر. He had disbelieved. That means he went back to the way that he was before. So where is that in something else? So the salah is لا حظ في الإسلام لأحد ترك الصلاة. There's no share of Islam for someone does not make salah. So just to say to the people that, there is valid differences of opinions among the ulama, that whoever abandons it is a disbeliever, and we won't pray janazah on a person if he knows this and he dies like that. This is can be a good da'wah for people to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we pray janazah over a person that committed suicide? In general, praying janazah for a Muslim that died as a sinner is still fardu kifaya. People should pray janazah on the Muslim no matter what, even if he is a criminal Muslim, even if he's the worst Muslim on the face of earth, janazah has to be prayed. But if some individuals chooses not to, as a lesson for the people, that's fine. Like for example, the Imam of the Masjid, he would not pray on him to give this message to the people that this person have done wrong and harm and evil. But of course, he has the right still for people to pray janazah on him. Of course, should we ask forgiveness for an evil person that died in the state of Islam to the best of our ability? Yes, of course, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him. He already returned to Allah. So to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he forgive his sins. Any more questions? I'm not rushing or anything, inshallah. If you guys are... طيب. Anything else? طيب, just 10 minutes, inshallah. من أركان الإسلام الزكاة. So now we finished these brief ahkam with regards to the salah. Now we go to the second pillar or the third pillar of Islam, which is az-zakah. He says the first ruling, hikmatu mashru'iyat az-zakah, he talks extensively in this, is the wisdom behind az-zakah. Briefly, he says purifying oneself from greed and being zealous and evil and things like this, because we are born to be or to have that greed in us. So when it's an obligation, you have to pay it. So it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are forced to overcome the greed in yourself. If it's optional, many people would not do it. Muwasat al-fuqara, to be kind to the poor and to take care of their needs and things like this. Number 3, to establish some of the major benefits to the ummah, that the ummah condition is based on it. He says also to limit so much wealth to some of those who are rich, so that the money is not only trapped into the hands of only some. أو تكون دولة بين الأغنياء, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that, so that the money is not just between the rich only, and it also reaches also the poor. And as we would see in the zakah, it's insignificant whatsoever, the portion of the zakah that is to be given, but it's fard. The ta'rif of the zakah, the definition of the zakah, he says هي القدر الواجب إخراجه لمستحقيه في المال الذي بلغ نصابا معينا بشروط مخصوصة. What's the definition of the zakah? القدر الواجب, the obligatory portion that has to go out. It has to be taken out. Every word is meant here. So you have to give the zakah. The zakah has to come out from the person. And it's the obligatory portion that is to come out to the mustahiq, to the one that deserves it. So there are people that deserve and some people that don't deserve. So it's not for anyone, for specific categories of people. The mustahiqi in what? Fil mal, in the wealth, in the types of wealth that would also come specific, not any wealth, that reached an-nisab. An-nisab is the minimum requirement that is mentioned also by the shara', mu'ayyanan, specific nisab for every type of money or wealth, بشروط مخصوصة, with specific conditions. So let's see how many points here are mentioned in the definition of the zakah. Qadrun wajib. So this is an obligatory portion. That's number 1. إخراجه, has to come out from the wealth. لمستحقي, to those who deserve the zakah, the categories of those who, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned them in the Quran, that only them are recipient of the zakah. Number 4, fil mal, in the money, or not the money, the wealth, because it's not just in money, in the wealth that reached an-nisab, that reached the minimum requirement, and we'll talk about the nisab. So the nisab has to be reached, and it's a specific one for each type of wealth. بشروط مخصوصة, number 5, in specific, with specific conditions. With specific conditions. Say them again. So قدر, وهي القدر الواجب, so it's an obligatory portion. إخراجه, it has to come out. لمستحقي, to those who deserve the zakah according to the shara, according to the deen, in the wealth that reaches the nisab, or the minimum requirement, as specifically mentioned in the shara. بشروط مخصوصة, with specific conditions. Okay, and he says وهي طهرة للعبد وتزكية للنفس. طهرة للعبد, it's purification for the slave of Allah, وتزكية للنفس, and purification to one's soul, because it's called zakah. What zakah linguistically means is purification. So it's purifying one's wealth. Like everything in this life needs to be purified, wealth needs to be purified. You need to clean yourself as your body, which is very precious to you. We have to clean our hearts. We have to clean our wealth. We clean it from what's haram, and we also clean it by giving the portion which is obligatory upon us to give for those who died, for those who are poor. So قال تعالى خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. The ayah in Surah At-Tawbah number 103, خذ, take from their wealth. So it means it has to come from them. صدقة, the obligatory charity, تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. تطهرهم, to purify them, to purify their wealth, and وتزكيهم, and to purify them, and to be above. Zakah also comes with the meaning of to elevate oneself over the greed of oneself. He says afterwards, the next point, مكانة الزكاة في الإسلام, the position of the zakah in Islam. He says هي أحد أركان الإسلام الخمسة, it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. وقرنت بالصلاة في مواضع كثيرة في كتاب الله, and it's always mentioned with the salah in many ayat of the Quran. So this is how great the zakah and important the zakah is. حكم الزكاة, what's the ruling of the zakah? الزكاة فريضة الله على كل مسلم. It's the فريضة of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon every Muslim. Is that the end of it? Is that the end of the sentence? No, it's not the end of the sentence. It's فريضة على كل مسلم ملك نصابا من مال بشروطه. For every Muslim that has the nisab from the specific type of wealth with its conditions. So going back to the definition of it. So, and that's why one of the masail of the zakah is there's a zakah upon the young person. If he has money, he's not addressed by rulings, but the zakah has to come out from his money, yes. Because it's upon every Muslim that has the nisab with the condition that his wealth reaches an nisab, and with the conditions that is going to be mentioned. فرضها الله في كتابه, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it as an obligation in his book, and the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam took it, of course, and it's many of the rulings as we would hear is from the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. وأمر, the Prophet sallam took the zakah from the people, because the zakah, which is an important point, it's the job of those who are in authority to make sure that the zakah is collected. You know how the state, they collect the tax for the Muslim state is the zakah. The zakah it's the job of those who are in authority. This is their responsibility to collect the zakah and to distribute it to those who deserve it. وأمر بأخذها ممن تجب عليه. The Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام ordered for people to collect the zakah from those who it's obligatory upon them. سواء كان كبيرا أو صغيرا. This is here whether they are big or small, old or young, ذكرا أو أنثى, male or female. He says صحيحا أو معتوها أو مجنونا, whether he is sick or healthy, whether he is crazy or insane, it doesn't matter. If an individual owns enough money to reach the nisab, the minimum requirements as specified in the deen, with the different wealth, and it passed a hawl and all of the conditions that we get to know, whether a person is even insane, that means those who are in charge of him are to take from the wealth of that person that is insane, that would be sufficient for his zakah. And he says, قال تعالى again, خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها, take from their wealth صدقة, the obligatory charity. وقوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم ومما أخرجنا لكم من الأرض, spend from what the pure of what you earned, which is another point here, what's mentioned in the verse that will come inshallah ta'ala. The zakah is only obligatory upon the halal wealth. If someone earned haram, and he has $1 billion of haram, pure haram money, no zakah in the haram money. Does that mean the person get a break if he has haram money? No, this is the real punishment. If you're deprived from giving zakah, that's a bad sign. Inna Allah tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyib. Allah is pure, He only accepts what is pure. So what is the ruling with the haram money is to get rid of it, all of it. To get rid of it in whatever benefits the people, but not something that is honored, that you would purify it by taking zakah from it. It's to be taken or to be given to the needy reasons, but not to pay zakah from it. So again, if someone he knows that he has some money that is haram, even if he did not repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he still has to give zakah. Right? So this is these some of the masail in the fiqh, they say الجهة منفكة or not منفكة, meaning that you have two rulings. They don't have to be detached from one another or detached to one another. Meaning someone's wealth, he knows, and he know that for sure, that he has 10% of his wealth is haram. He sells liquor, whatever, he do haram. And the rest is halal. And he made a fortune out of this. Should he says, well, I'm a filthy person, I'm sinful, then no zakah, no nothing. Of course, this is even worse. So that person has to give zakah. So the fact that he is dealing with haram does not take away from the fact that he needs to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give the zakah. And he needs to fear Allah and to make salah. But he needs to fear Allah to repent to Allah from that sin, not to make him even a worse individual. So in that case, imagine someone because people would say, what are you doing? You're giving zakah when you're earning haram. That person should be, of course, repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. But if he doesn't, he should see the wealth that passed a whole year and he's now giving the zakah. The 10% that is haram, to put it aside. Don't give zakah from 10%. You don't count this as your yearly money that you're going to give zakah from. The rest, you give the 2.5%. And this haram, get rid of it. If he doesn't get rid of it and continue to be sinful, that's sin. But the zakah has to be calculated only from the halal money, not from the haram. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, establish the salah and give the zakah. And many verses in the Quran and the hadith that we just memorized last week or this last week. بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. Islam has been built on 5 pillars, one of which وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ, and to give the zakah. And the word إِيتَاء الزَّكَاة. Then the next point, which is maybe we can delay it to next time, inshallah ta'ala, al-amwal allati tajibu fiha az-zakah. What are the amwal? What are the types of wealth that the zakah is obligatory in? Because it's not any wealth, only specific wealth, and also specific recipients of the zakah, not anyone. So there are only 4. We'll mention the titles of them and then we continue next time. Al-athman, anything that has what they call al-athman in the translation, monetary value, or something that has monetary assets. monetary assets. So whether it's gold, silver, and والأوراق المالية, cash, the money basically. So the money and gold and silver are all the same rulings. But we're not going to continue with that yet. The second one, zakat bahimatul an'am, the zakat of the cattle. Also, each one has a minimum requirement. Not one have one goat or one sheep or one camel. So bahimatul an'am, and the bahimatul an'am, the cattle are camels, cows, and goats and sheep. That's it. These are the bahimatul an'am. And number 3, zakatul khariji min al-ard, the zakah of what comes out from the earth. And this has specific details to it. Not every plant, not every matter, but specific things. Also specific things of how the zakah is to be given. And the 4th one, zakat urud al-tijara, the zakah of trade or businesses, of things that are ready to be sold. Things are ready to be sold. The rulings of the zakah, since it's not used all the time, it might be not easy for everyone. So that's why, inshallah ta'ala, we need to give it more time and to explain it in some details according to what's here. We're not going to expand so much, and this is good so that we see the foundations of it, and inshallah we go from there, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll stop here. And if you have any specific details, question of the zakah, that's fine. But that's something that you need, not from the perspective of learning. But let's first take the hadith of today, inshallah. Hadith number 86. Hadith number 86. عن أبي جهيم بن الحارث. عن أبي جهيم بن الحارث رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي ماذا عليه من الإثم لكان أن يقف 40 خيرا له من أن يمر بين يديه. لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي ماذا عليه من الإثم لكان أن يقف 40 خيرا له من أن يمر بين يديه. One more time. لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي ماذا عليه من الإثم لكان أن يقف 40 خيرا له من أن يمر بين يديه. متفق عليه واللفظ للبخاري. So this is in Bukhari and Muslim and others. The hadith means, and hopefully that you're looking at the hadith so that you correct or that you make sure that you pronounce it right. Last week, inshallah, we'll take 6 or so a hadith, inshallah. 2 or so will be mandatory to memorize, to be tested in, and then the rest you need to make sure that you read them correctly and understand the meaning of it and some of the benefits from it, inshallah ta'ala. So here, لو يعلم المار. If المار, the passing person, al-murur is to pass by something. So al-mar is the person passing. Al-mar is the person passing. If al-marru, let's go to the third word. لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي. So al-marru بين يدي المصلي, the one that passes in front of the two hands of the praying person, which is in front of the person. The one that passes in front of the praying person, the one that is praying. And بين يدي المصلي, that means in front of him. Al-yadai is the muthanna, the plural of yad, two hands. So, but this is explained like this so that it's very clear. Whoever passes in front of the al-musalli, or the one that is making salah. The first two words, لو يعلم. لو, if. يعلم, knows. If he knows. If the one that passes in front of the musalli, in front of the one that making salah, if he knows ماذا عليه من الإثم, what, ماذا is what upon him عليه from the sin, if he knows how much sin that he is incurring upon himself, لكان, he would have then أن يقف, that he would stand 40 for 40. This riwayah 40 what doesn't say 40 what. There's another narration 40 years. 40 years. In this narration that we're taking, it's left open. 40 days, 40 years, 40 centuries. That he would stay there and stand for 40. خيرا له, better for him, من أن يمر بين يديه. Better for him than to pass. يمر is the verb. Mar is the individual passing. The passing individual, it's one word in Arabic. Al-mar. You know that in the Arabic language you have the verb, you make from the verb noun, of course, and from the verb you can make ismul fa'il, ismul maf'ul. Ismul fa'il, the doer of the verb. So instead of saying the passing person, you know, as if you're saying the passer. There's no such a thing, right? So al-mar is the one that passes. So here it's better for him that from min an yamurra, it's better for him than he is to pass بين يديه, in front of his hands, meaning in front of him. So basically the hadith is warning against those who would walk in front of someone making salah. If a person knows what he's doing of a sin, if he walks in front of a musalli, he would rather stay for 40 years, as one narration, or to wait for 40 for a long time, better for him than to pass in front of him. So this is a severe warning. If it's 40 minutes, you know, people would be so much irritated. So imagine if you know that what kind of a sin that is, a person, if he has the choice to even stay for 40 years, he would stay and not to cut one salah by passing in front of the person praying. First of all, who is the musalli here? The musalli here is the one that is praying alone, munfarid, or the imam. It's forbidden to walk in front of him. The ma'moom, it's okay. Of course, it's not like it's okay though. Let's walk in front of the ma'mumeen when they're making salah. But if there's a need for someone to walk, he broke his wudu and he's in the first saf. Can he leave and walk in front of the ma'mumeen? Yes. Ibn Abbas, he came to the salah one time and there was a spot in the row empty. But the only way for him to come and join, and he had a small donkey with him, a mule with him. And the only way for him to get there is that he has to walk in front of the people between the lines to get to the empty spot. So he walked with his mule between the people till he reached the place of salah, and he stood. Nobody opposed him. The Prophet ﷺ never said anything to him. So this is the ma'mumeen. And the ma'mum, his sutra, and this is the subject of the sutra, that when you pray to something, is the imam. The imam is sutra to the ma'mum. And that's why the imam and the person praying alone, to make it easy for the Muslimin, is to find a sutra and to pray to it. Find something to pray to it because of the severity of the crime that if a person walks in front of a musalli. And that's why some of the ulama, they said if someone prays without a sutra, there's no, the hadith does not apply for him. But it still applies, as some said, and this is how it should be, inshallah ta'ala. But where is the limits? If someone has a sutra, praying to a wall or a human being in front of him or the leg of a chair or a pillar or whatever, then of course behind the pillar, you're fine. and the person should be close to his sutra in such a way that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would make sujood, the distance between his head in sujood ﷺ, and the pillar, for example, is only enough space for a goat to pass. Not a big space, but only space for a small goat to pass. That means close to the sutra. You don't have to step back to go to face the sutra. Some people make it very close, but to be close enough. And this is the importance of the sutra. If someone is not praying to a sutra, can a person walk in front of him? The answer is no. But where is the limit? It should be by the urf. So if someone is praying in the back of the masjid without a sutra, without anything in front of him, and you want to walk in front of him, it should be enough distance. Some people right after the sujood, not right after the sujood position. It should be a little bit longer, meaning that if someone walking here, for example, like this, and someone is praying at the back of the masjid, would you consider that person walking in front of someone praying? No. How did we know that? Did we measure distance and this and that? No, it's the urf. It's how it's perceived. So if it's close enough that a person would say, oh, this person is walking in front of someone making salah, then this is the hadith applies. And it's better for him to stand than to wait for 40, and one of the narrations 40 years, better than to cut off someone's salah by walking in front of him. And that also shows the greatness of the salah. This moments that a person says, Allahu Akbar, he is in a completely different state than when he is not making salah. And the difference between the salah and not the salah is Allahu Akbar. And of course the intention and the wudu and all of these rulings. So the salah is not a simple matter like this. The world can change because of a person standing and making salah. And you can imagine what is the magnitude of a sin that the Prophet ﷺ would say that. Someone is making salah, he is yunaji rabbah. He is, and munajah is the secret talk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in front of the person, as the hadith says, when he makes salah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is close to him with his knowledge, with his power subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a conversation that is happening, and nothing is the like of Allah. If the musalli says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Hamadani Abdi, my slave praised me. If he says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, Majjadani Abdi. Every time a person is reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, and every time he is in the salah, Allah would say, my slave glorified me. Malik Yawmiddin, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, a covenant between my slave, and so on. So this is not a simple matter, but because of the time. So it shows that the importance of this, and to exalt the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to, there's more rulings with this. If an animal passes, if a child passes. The Prophet ﷺ, one time a goat was coming that way, and he saw that it's going to be between him and his sutra. He walked ﷺ till his stomach, till his body touched the jidar or the wall, so that there's no space for that goat except to walk behind him. So this is one of the things, that if a person is praying to a sutra and he sees a child coming or something, to take a step and to be close to the sutra, so that the child or whatever, he has no choice but to go behind him, so that he does not walk in front of him. Of course, the child is not sinful, he doesn't know what he's doing. But here the hadith is addressing those who would walk in front of a person making salah, because this is a sinful thing. So hopefully this is inshallah ta'ala clear, and maybe we can repeat it again later inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. And for the questions, inshallah, as usual, we'll have it after the salah, inshallah. Inshallah, the questions after the salah, inshallah ta'ala.